Rep the South Side whenever you pay with your White Sox debit card from Wintrust Community Banks and score perks like free ATMs, no monthly fees, and a $300 opening bonus. Pay with pride every time with Wintrust, Chicago's bank.
Hey everyone, it's Chuck Garfien. Welcome back to another edition of the White Sox Podcast, brought to you as always by Wintrust, Chicago's bank. Show your team pride. The White Sox debit card. Get yours at wintrust.com/Sox. Member FDIC, EHL lender. All right, on the podcast today, we have a conversation with new White Sox pitcher Adrian Houser. What a road he has taken to get here to the White Sox. How about 5 different organizations in less than a year? So he'll talk about his journey here, the changes he made in the offseason, and why he has been so successful with the White Sox. He's only given up 3 runs total in his first 3 starts with the White Sox. We also get into, I'll just call it his claim to fame at the start of his career. I'll just say this, it all began with the throw-up game. Yes, the throw-up game back in 2018. Oh, and then again in 2019. Adrian Houser. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more on the White Sox Podcast. Here we go. All right, I'm here with Adrian Houser. Adrian, let's start with this. You kind of fell from the sky and arrived here with the White Sox seemingly out of nowhere. What's it been like so far for you 3 starts in?
It's been great. Obviously the first couple of days was a little bit of a whirlwind, just getting up here, getting everything settled, getting the contract signed, getting in the game, that same day, and, meeting the guys on the fly and everything. But, everything's been well and everything's been going good.
Yeah, I mean, in the last year, you have played for 5 different organizations, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, 5. I'm going to go through all this with you, but as you sit here right now, what has that been like for you, the last year playing for 5 different organizations?
A lot of struggles, a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of hard thinking, a lot of, fighting through some stuff, and a lot of life changes. So, it's been a whole process of things, kind of how this journey is. You got your up and your down, so you just got to kind of go with the flow and, ride the roller coaster as it goes. And, I was able to make some adjustments this past offseason and was able to, put myself in the spot where I'm at now.
Okay, so you're with the Mets, you signed with them, you make some starts, things did not go your way, and they released you in July, I believe.
Yeah, right before the trade deadline.
What was that experience like to, you're in this chance to make the playoffs, you're on a really good team, and you don't perform to your capabilities?
Yeah, it's kind of almost heartbreaking to yourself. You put in all that work and you want to do your best for your teammates and your guys. You want to put your best foot forward, and sometimes that you're not able to do that, and that's kind of how I felt last year. I felt like there was a little something missing, just wasn't able to put it together and piece it together. And going through that, it's the first time being DFA'd and going through all that whole stuff. So like I said, it led to a lot of downtime thinking and a lot of process to get to this point. So it was good for me, help a hard reset, but kind of trying to make the most of it.
You signed with the Cubs. Soon after that, you made, I got the numbers here, 4 starts in AAA, and they released you.
Yes.
So what was the bigger blow, the Mets or the Cubs at that point?
Well, probably the Mets, just being in the big leagues, being on a good team, playoff team, knowing that they were going to give it a good run down the line. I had an out with the Cubs, kind of like I did this year with the Rangers, so that's kind of where we were at. We didn't feel like we were going to get an opportunity there, and so we pivoted, and I think we went to the Orioles, and hoping to get an opportunity there and just finish the season there.
Okay, so basically in like 3 weeks you were with 3 teams.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. it was pretty quick.
It was pretty quick.
Yeah.
And then the offseason you signed with the Rangers, but when did things flip for you in terms of, okay, I need to do this, and what was all that you needed to change?
It happened when I was in AAA with the Cubs, sitting in Des Moines, Iowa, just sitting in my hotel room, being away from my family and stuff, being by myself a lot, was able to, obviously reflect on everything that happened last year and everything I was going through, and, knew I needed to make some changes, and then was slowly, just going through the process of figuring things out. And obviously I knew my buddy was working at Pitching Works, a place that I went to this off season, and they helped me out a lot. And I reached out to him when I was in there. It was August. I was reaching out to him saying I was interested, wanted to do that. and they said they were all for it. So we got in contact, got it set up for the end of the season. I'd come down there and throw a bullpen with them. And then with that, I knew I needed to change my diet up, and been seeing a lot of stuff on people doing fasting and doing like 72 hours fast. And so I basically told myself the week before I was going to start working out, I was going to do a 72-hour fast, line it up to where I hit the ground running right as I'm going into workouts, and also started doing the carnivore diet a little bit, or I should say carnivore-ish diet, because I'm not like super strict on it. During the off season, like Monday through Friday, I was, heavy on it, like wasn't cheating nothing. And then Saturday, Sunday, we call it pancake Saturday mornings with my son and my wife. So, we had some pancakes on the weekends.
That was the one exception.
Oh, yeah,
but I got to go back to this 72-hour fast. So what's that, just liquids?
Yeah, so when I did it, I was just doing pretty much just water and putting a little bit of Celtic salt in my water to help kind of hydrate me. And I would
for 3 days.
Yeah, for 3 days, and it was nothing but that. And I would take one element because it had no sugar or anything. It was basically all natural salt and kind of help hydrate. And I would drink one of those while I was in the sauna every night.
And how did you feel?
I felt great after I got it all.
After?
Yeah, that was probably about the 65-hour mark when I knew I was going to be eating a nice steak for dinner that night, and I was preparing it and getting ready. I was starting to get a little hangry, so it was a little driving me nuts a little bit, but I pulled through.
Okay, so you get a minor league deal with the Rangers, and when you showed up at spring training, were you feeling like, okay, this is all that work that you put in, and this was in Oklahoma, right? That's
yes.
where this was at. It's now paying off, or did that come a little later?
No, I felt like going into spring training that everything that we did in the off season, all the work that we did and everything we've changed and adjusted, that, I put myself in a really good spot to, possibly earn a spot going into spring training. Obviously, I knew the odds were stacked against me, having a minor league deal, not being on the roster and stuff like that. So, I wasn't really thinking about that, put that in the background and just working, like focus on putting in my work every day and keeping my routine the same and just going out and putting my best foot forward. And, I felt like I did that in spring training and put myself in a good spot.
Yeah, so your velocity's up, what, a tick or two?
Yeah, I think somewhere around there, a tick or two up this year.
Okay, so what's been, it's not a secret, but what are the ingredients for why you are so much better now?
Changed mechanics, was able to get the mechanics a little bit better, got a little bit more free, was able to kind of stabilize my body, I guess you could say, down the mound a little bit better. I was quad loading a lot, and so I wasn't really getting into my back half and lower half the correct way. And so once we identified that, we were able to, really work on that, hammer that out, and was able to piece that together throughout the off season. And to go with that, got my arm strength better, started doing a different arm routine. So that improved quite a bit. Still some improvement left to do there, so still some work. And then also just like getting overall stronger with the workout program that they gave me there at Pitching Works, especially like specified to me, like it does like everything that I need to work on, not based on like a group effort or something. It's like specific to me. So I think that really helped in getting certain areas stronger and making myself overall better.
All right, so there you are. You're in Texas, and I'm looking at your game log, and you were pitching pretty well, and you had a really good game in your last start. 1 out away from a complete game shutout. This is in AAA in Round Rock, right?
Yeah.
And you had an opt-out clause coming, right, where you could potentially leave and sign get a major league deal with someone, right?
Yeah, the very next day. Yeah, the opt-out was after that outing.
So were you kind of like, all right, here's my last shot? If not last shot, but like
a little bit. I knew I had the opt-out coming up, and so to maybe put myself into an opportunity or give myself a chance to have an opportunity somewhere, I knew I needed to kind of throw the ball well down the stretch there. But I really wasn't trying to think too much about that. Like kind of the same process in spring training. Just wanted to keep the routine the same and keep attacking the guys the way I have been, and it worked out really well.
Okay, so let's talk about how it worked out. So you get off the mound, right? You have this great game. How hot was it, by the way, that day?
I think at game time it was around 100 or 102, or like the feel like temperature was like 105 or something like that. So pretty hot.
Pretty hot. And did you have multiple offers, multiple opportunities besides the White Sox?
There were a few minor league opportunities, kind of like the same thing I had with the Rangers. A few, teams say you can come to AAA, maybe an opportunity in the big leagues, and we were able to actually get a couple major league offers. And once we were able to see that, we giving those opportunities, weren't going to be able to pass those up. You know, those don't come very often, and you know, want to make the most of those, and was able to settle on coming here to the White Sox. Felt like it was the best opportunity, best fit, and you know, it's been great.
Okay, so they sign you. I mean, I've been covering baseball a long time, but I've never seen someone signed and that day they're starting. Mm-hmm. So how did that conversation go where they told you, yeah, we're signing you, can you be here, if not tomorrow, today, and start for this team?
Yeah, basically, once we found out like the deal was on the table, I packed up my stuff in Round Rock. I drove home to Tulsa to see my wife and son, dropped my truck off, kind of repacked, resettled, and got ready and flew up here and did the physical type stuff and signed the contract and was in there. So
you showed up here, signed the contract, and how many hours later were you?
I think I signed the contract at noon that day. So.
And did you know you'd be starting that day if you signed?
Yeah.
Okay.
They kind of gave me a heads up on that, so like I kind of at least knew the game plan going forward, or at least somewhat of a game plan.
So there you are. You're ready to start. And what happens next?
About 2-hour rain delay. Just, you know, baseball doing that stuff too.
Yeah. And I just love this whole thing. And your catcher was Edgar Quero, a 22-year-old rookie who had only been up in the majors for a few weeks. And then you shut out the Mariners 1-0, all that thrown at you. What kind of accomplishment did that feel for you, all that thrown at you, and you come away with a victory?
You know, it felt good, you know, just being able to get this opportunity, come up here and be able to, you know, show the work that I've been putting in all off season and so far this season. So being able to come up here and do that to a really good offensive team, and you know, for the first time being back in the big leagues, you know, it feels like a pretty good accomplishment. And obviously, just want to keep hammering that down and keep working away and keeping improving on that.
Yeah. What did Quero show you?
Great. He's got a lot of talent. You know, every game I throw into him, every day, it seems like he's getting better and better, picking up on more things, and you know, learning baseball. You know, that's part of being a rookie. You know, those first couple of years is, you know, really learning and adjusting and figuring out the ins and outs of everything. And you know, I think he's doing a really good job of it so far. Yeah,
I just found it interesting that you sign a contract and you walk into the clubhouse and you meet your catcher, who's going to be catching you in about 4 hours.
Yeah. Walk in and say, hey, you ready to go do our little meeting? And walk back, did a meeting, and there we go.
And then this revenge tour begins for you. The schedule was so funny. So you beat the Mariners. Next start against the Mets in New York. Start after that in Baltimore. Two teams that had released you in the last year. What was that like for you?
You know, it was fun. You know, playing with those guys in New York last year. I knew they're, you know, a great team. They've added some great pieces this year. Obviously, they made a deep run last year, so I knew they were going to be making that kind of same run this year. So you know, it was fun to go back out there and compete against them, and you know, kind of show what the work that I put in a little bit. But you know, obviously that was what I was trying to do for them last year. You know, that's how baseball works. Sometimes it doesn't quite work out the way you want it to. But it was nice to be able to go up there and show what I can do. Did
you get any texts, any messages from either of those teams saying like, wait, why did we let you go?
No, I talked to some of the guys in New York, and they were just telling me, you know, you look great, you know, everything, you know, talking about, you know, physically how I looked, just how I looked on the mound and everything. And just thought the stuff was great. So, you know, a lot of encouragement from those guys, and so I appreciate that. Okay,
you will be playing the Cubs at some point. That's the third team you can face this year. Would that be one you'd want to circle on the calendar?
Maybe, you know, just going with the flow right now. Not so much of a revenge tour, just, you know, taking the opportunity that's been given and making the most of it.
This is my revenge tour for you. This is not your revenge tour, but I kind of like it how the schedule has worked that way, and you almost faced the Rangers.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. After I looked at the schedule after signing here, I was like, wow, like literally, like every team I played for within like the last year and a half is on the schedule. So it's kind of crazy how it worked out that way.
Okay, so I want to go back to something that happened to you starting in 2018, and no one's probably ready for this, but I'm just going to call it what it is. It's known as the throw-up game.
Game one.
Throw-up
game one.
This was, you were a rookie.
Yep. 2018. I believe it was Father's Day. Yeah, because I believe I was wearing the light blue hat.
Yeah. You're with the Brewers now. Was this your major league debut? Or was a few appearances?
No, there was.
Career?
I think this may have been my third appearance in Milwaukee that year. I was coming. That season was my first full year coming back from Tommy John.
Okay.
So I was still kind of on the rehab tour. Started in AA. Was in AAA at the time. This came around, so it was in Colorado Springs at that time.
So you come from Colorado Springs to Milwaukee. You're on the mound. There's a lot of people there, like 40,000.
I think so. Yeah, it was a day game, Sunday day game in Milwaukee. They usually show up pretty good there.
And what happened?
It was a tough travel day. Found out at like midnight the night before that I had to be on a flight at like 8 or 9 in the morning to get out. So I had to rush around, pack up, go get my baseball stuff, do all that. Obviously in the rush of getting to the airport, everything, I didn't eat breakfast. Show up to the field about 30 minutes before game time. So I'm trying to get ready, get unpacked, get all this my stuff, try to eat a little bit, trying to stay hydrated because it's a hot day in Milwaukee, one of the hottest days that summer, I believe. And go to the bullpen, play a little catch, sit there chilling, and they say, all right, it's time for you to go in, do my warm up, everything's good, get on the mound. I think I had like 1 out, and I was like, everything, all that workup just got to me, and I just started puking on the mound, couldn't hold it in, and there we go for game 1 of throw up game.
What were you thinking at that time? Like, wow, I am really embarrassed. I cannot believe I just did this.
Yeah, but I was more like just hold it in, try to finish the inning and get it over with. Try not to like let it all come out, but unfortunately, it all came out.
And it did a second time.
Yes, that was. I think it was a year later. I think it was in July. Yeah, about a year later against the Rangers.
Okay, so yeah, I've got that information here too. So
you're on it.
I'm on it. So this is 2019. It happens in the first inning.
Yeah, first inning. Two outs, ground ball chopper right back to me. I make an error as I'm leaning over and like to field it, I can feel like my stomach just goes in knots and like fumble the ball, miss it. I think it was Elvis Andrus hit it, got on base, and 𝗵𝗏 was playing third, and he tossed me the ball, and I tossed it right back to him. I said, I got to throw up. And he like looked at me weird. He was like, what? And I just walked to the back of the mound and let it all out, and he's like trying to get the boys to block the center field camera to try to protect me and everything, and I got it all out. They cleaned it up, so I was good to go. Took a swig of water, and I think I ended up throwing like 6 innings or something like that.
You did. You threw 6 innings, and you struck out 10, and you gave up 1 earned run. And the quote that you gave after the game was, "If I keep pitching like this, I'll do this every time."
Yeah, if you get those results every time, I think I'll take a puking on the mound every game in front of 40,000 people. Just as long as they give me a little puking rally a little bit after, I'll be good.
I just love your attitude about it, because there's some people who would be like, I was so embarrassing and humiliating, I don't want to talk about it. But I don't want to say you like embraced it like you're gonna have a T-shirt made out of it, but
actually did. It's funny that you brought that up. My buddy Dylan Bundy was pitching for the Angels in New York against the Yankees at the time. I think it was like 2nd or 3rd inning, super hot, and he threw up on the mound, like same kind of thing, and came out of the game. And one of my buddies from back home said, "Hey, you need to get these shirts made." It was me puking and him puking, and it said Oklahoma Hurlers. So I got a couple of shirts that say Oklahoma Hurlers on it back in my house.
Have you worn these shirts?
I have worn these shirts.
I've worn these
shirts multiple times.
Oklahoma Hurlers. I might name my next rotisserie baseball team the Oklahoma Hurlers. That's amazing. But okay, I'm going to ask you this question. I mean, this was the start of your career.
Yeah.
Did this help you in any way? Did this inspire you in any way? Did this have any kind of meaning to your life, or it was just like, okay, 2 games, I just puked on the field, and that's all that was?
Yeah, kind of that way. I think honestly, John Boy Media, I think when they made a video of it and I caught wind of the video, people were showing it to me. I think when he made that video and I was just dying laughing, I think I was like, all right, I'm completely okay with it. Had a good outing and whatever. Like, people saw it happens, and he made fun of it, and it was great. So I've just been rocking with it, and ever since.
I love it. We'll be showing some video of it, just so you know.
Be prepared.
Yeah, but all good. And just as you are here right now, before we finish up, just looking forward to your next start against the Royals. How are you preparing for the start?
Just getting ready. The same thing. Just making sure the body's right, getting everything, kind of centered in, locked in, synced up. Kind of how I've been feeling. Trying to. Trust the process. Nothing too crazy. Trying to keep on top of everything that I've been doing so far this season, and obviously just looking at scouting reports and seeing what they're doing best right now, what they're doing. Seeing some weak areas, whatever. Kind of where we need to attack and stuff like that. So, just overall, just getting ready mentally and physically.
Do you feel like the veteran on this pitching staff? Okay, I mean, Martin Perez is here, but he's not pitching right now. But do you feel like you can play a role, or are playing a role in that, as being kind of not a leader, as some kind of mentor?
A little bit, a few years of experience for me, and obviously, like, we've been talking about these guys, they're all getting up on the most innings they've thrown in the big leagues this year. So, just being able to be here to help them out, maybe whenever they need it, to like kind of get through some of those struggles or some of those rough patches, or trying to figure out a good routine to stay recovering and stuff, and just on the pitching side of things too. Just however I can help out, I'd gladly be able to help out and just try to do what I can.
All right. Adrian Houser of the Chicago White Sox and the Oklahoma Hurlers. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and that's a wrap for this edition of the White Sox Podcast. Hawk Harrelson, take it away.
All right, Chuck, this edition of the White Sox Podcast is over.